Logan Dempsey didn't expect his entire week to change because his 5-year-old son accidentally kicked a soccer ball into a stranger's head. "Hey," the woman gasped as the ball bounced off her shoulder and tumbled into the gutter. She stumbled back, clutching the apartment brochure in one hand and rubbing her temple with the other. Logan jogged over from the sidewalk, breathless. "I am so sorry." Danny gets a little wild when he's excited. Danny, a tangle of curls and scraped knees, looked up sheepishly from behind Logan. "Sorry, lady, I didn't mean to hit you. You okay?" The woman blinked, then laughed a soft, surprised sound like she hadn't laughed in days. "I think I'll survive, as long as I don't end up with a soccer ball-shaped bruise." Logan's eyes crinkled at the corners. "If it helps, I can offer ice and a juice box. That's what we use for all injuries around here." She tilted her head, a smile tugging her lips. "Ice and a juice box, huh? That's a tempting offer." He picked up the ball and tossed it back to Danny. "Go take a water break, bud." Danny ran toward the steps of their small, weathered apartment building, plopping down on the third stair. Logan turned back to the woman. "You looking for a place around here?" She held up a worn-out flyer. "Yeah, this building, apartment 4B. I'm supposed to meet the landlord in 20 minutes. He let out a low whistle. "4B, that's the one right above us." She raised an eyebrow. "You live here?" "Yup, me and my tornado of a son." "It's not much, but it's home." The woman looked around at the cracked sidewalk, the rusty gate, the peeling green paint on the entrance door, but her eyes softened when they landed on Logan again. "You like it here," he shrugged. "It's loud. Sometimes the hot water doesn't work. But the neighbors are nice, and we get a view of the city lights if you lean out the fire escape just right." She laughed again, and something about her face shifted like she hadn't expected to find anything charming in this neighborhood. "I'm Noelle Grayson, by the way. Logan Dempsey," he said, offering his hand. "And that's Danny, he's 5. Loves dinosaurs, hates bedtime, and thinks broccoli is a conspiracy." Noelle shook his hand, her grip firm but warm. She glanced at Danny, who waved at her from the stairs with apple juice dripping down his chin. "He's cute. He gets that from his mom," Logan said, then quickly added, "She passed away 3 years ago." Noelle's smile faltered just slightly. "I'm so sorry. It's okay." "We're doing all right." He gestured to the building. "Want me to show you around before the landlord gets here? I mean, I'm not a real estate agent or anything, but I can tell you which pipes groan at night." Noelle hesitated a beat, then nodded. "Yeah. I'd like that." They walked slowly up the stairs, Logan pointing out the quirky things about the building, the creaky floorboards, the neighbor who played saxophone until midnight, the cat that wasn't anyone's but acted like it owned the place. Noelle listened closely, her heels clicking softly against the old wood. "You said you're a single dad. What do you do?" "I work construction," Logan said. "Odd jobs mostly. Some weeks are better than others." She glanced at him sideways. "And yet you still offer strangers ice and juice boxes." He grinned. "What can I say? I'm a generous guy." Noelle looked around the apartment building again, then back at Logan's face. "You've got one of those smiles that makes people feel safe, you know," he blinked. "Was that a compliment?" She laughed. "Maybe." They reached the top floor and Logan knocked on the door of 4B. "This is it. It's got decent light in the afternoon and no one's ever had a break-in." "Well, except when Danny locked me out and I had to crawl through the window." Noelle laughed so suddenly she had to steady herself against the doorframe. "You're serious?" "Dead serious. My kid's got a rebellious streak." She looked at him for a moment, something unreadable in her eyes. "You know, I wasn't sure about this neighborhood, but you make it feel different." Before he could respond, the landlord appeared at the end of the hallway, keys jangling. "Miss Grayson," Noelle turned, her entire posture shifting straighter, more polished. "That's me." Logan watched the transformation with quiet curiosity. Her voice had changed, too more clipped, more formal. "You came earlier than expected," the landlord said, unlocking the door. "I was in the area," she said lightly. Then she glanced back at Logan and gave him a wink. "Had a good tour guide." Logan gave her a 2-finger salute, feeling oddly disappointed as she stepped inside. He turned to head back downstairs, but Danny had already run up again. "Is the lady gonna live here?" Logan ruffled his hair. "I don't know, bud, but I like her," Danny said. "She laughed at my ball hit." "Yeah," Logan said quietly. "Me too." The next evening, Logan came home to find a moving van in front of the building. He blinked at the sight of Noelle in jeans and a messy bun, tugging a suitcase behind her. "You're moving in," she looked up, flushed from lifting a box. "Yup, got the place. Figured I'd give it a shot." He stared at her, still in disbelief. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," she echoed with a grin. Danny popped his head out the window upstairs. "Hey lady, you're back," she laughed. "Hi again, soccer star." Logan stepped forward and took the box from her hands. "You need help?" Noelle looked up at him, her voice softer now. "Only if it comes with more juice boxes," he chuckled. "I'll throw in a peanut butter sandwich." "That's our signature welcome meal." She followed him up the stairs, her fingers brushing his arm briefly. And for the first time in a long time, Logan Dempsey felt like something good was beginning. The sound of a drill echoed up the stairwell the next morning, followed by a clang and a muffled curse. Logan paused halfway to his door, balancing a grocery bag on one arm and Danny's backpack slung over the other shoulder. "Don't tell me you're building furniture before coffee," he called out as he stepped onto Noelle's floor. She was crouched beside a half-assembled bookshelf, a confusing pile of screws and wooden slats around her. Her hair was caught in a loose braid, and her sweatshirt had a streak of something paint, maybe across the sleeve. "I thought I could handle an Allen wrench," she said, tightening a bolt with visible frustration. "Turns out I was wrong. You're brave for even trying," Logan said, setting his groceries down and kneeling beside her. "These things are designed to destroy your spirit. I'm starting to suspect that." He picked up the instruction sheet. "Okay, you skipped step 5. You've got the sides reversed," she groaned. "I knew something felt off. You want help?" Noelle hesitated, looking at him sideways. "You sure? You already helped me haul that enormous dresser up the stairs." "I owe you. Danny's been talking about you nonstop since yesterday. Something about how you're the only grown-up who thinks it's cool to get hit with a soccer ball." She laughed under her breath, the sound raspy from a long night. "I've taken worse hits in boardrooms." Logan's brow lifted. "Boardrooms? That's oddly specific." She paused for a split second, then shrugged with a crooked grin. "Let's just say I've had my fair share of battles in pencil skirts and heels." He let that sit for a moment, curious, but didn't press. Instead, he flipped the shelf upright and began securing the base. "You ever live in a place like this before?" "Not exactly," she said, pushing a stack of flattened boxes out of the way. "I've always had elevators." "That sounds suspiciously like you're used to luxury." "I wouldn't call it that." "You hesitated." She gave him a look. "I hesitated because I was trying to decide if honesty would freak you out." He leaned back on his heels. "Try me. I used to live in a building where the doorman knew my coffee order, and the concierge once booked me a last-minute flight to Tokyo." Logan blinked. "That's not this building," Noelle chuckled. "No, it is not." He tightened the final screw and stood up. "So what brings someone like you to a place like this?" She paused, her fingers tracing the top of the now sturdy shelf. "Let's just say I needed a reset, a real one. Not the kind where you stay at a spa in the Alps and pretend your life isn't falling apart." Logan didn't ask for details. He just nodded and picked up the empty box. "You hungry? Danny and I were about to make pancakes. I don't want to intrude." "You won't be. He's already set the table for 3. She followed him downstairs, and when they walked into the apartment, Danny looked up from his cereal mixing experiment and grinned. "You came?" "I did," she said, crouching beside him. "Now tell me what's your secret pancake ingredient." "Bananas. But don't tell anyone. It'll be our secret," she whispered. As Logan poured the batter onto the skillet, he glanced at Noelle. She was sitting at the table, legs tucked under her, hair falling from her braid in soft waves. She looked nothing like the woman he'd met on the sidewalk. She looked like she belonged here. By the time the pancakes were gone, and Danny had been bribed into cleaning up with the promise of a dinosaur documentary later, Logan walked Noelle to her door. "I meant what I said earlier," Logan said. "You don't seem like someone who lands here by accident." "You're right," she said quietly, "but I needed to see what I looked like without all the noise. The money, the meetings, the constant expectations. You think you'll find that here?" She looked up at him, her eyes steady. "I already feel more myself in these walls than I did in any penthouse." He nodded slowly, not sure what to say to that. "So instead," he said, If you ever need help fixing more furniture, you know where to find me. I might break something on purpose just for an excuse." He laughed, and her smile lingered even after the door closed behind her. Later that evening, Logan stepped out onto the fire escape to clear his head, a mug of lukewarm coffee in hand. The city glowed in the distance, all golden haze and moving lights. He heard the soft creak of a window opening above him and looked up to see Noelle leaning over her sill, hair now tied back neatly, a book in one hand. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." They looked at each other across the wall that separated their windows. And somehow it didn't feel like a wall at all. Noelle's blazer was wrinkled, her heels were in her tote bag, and her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. She sat on the edge of her new bed, the mattress still without a frame, and stared at the names lighting up her screen. Board members. Assistants. Her father's lawyer. She let the call go to voicemail and stood, crossing the room to the window. Outside, the city stretched wide and unfamiliar in this direction. Less glass and steel, more brick and rust, and strangely, it felt easier to breathe. She hadn't told Logan who she really was. Not yet. Not because she was hiding, but because for the first time in years, no one cared. He hadn't asked about her last name. Hadn't Googled her. Hadn't looked at her like she was a title before a person. That night, she didn't go back to the world she came from. She stayed. The next morning, Logan was out front fixing Danny's bike chain when she walked out with a folded newspaper under her arm and 2 coffees. "You look like you've been up for hours," she said, offering him one. Danny decided 5 in the morning was an acceptable time to start a science experiment involving toothpaste and vinegar, Logan said, taking the cup. The explosion was educational. She laughed, but her eyes flicked to Danny, who was now attempting to duct tape a plastic dinosaur to his handlebars. "He's happy. He's got everything he needs." Noelle crouched beside Danny. "What's the dinosaur's mission? To protect me from traffic. That's a very important job." Logan watched her quietly. She was different this morning, less composed, more open. Like she'd peeled off a layer of something she didn't need anymore. When Danny ran off to test his new Guardian on wheels, Logan turned to her. "You're not like most people who move in around here. You mean I'm not running from a breakup or a lease increase? I mean you walk like someone who used to be in charge of a lot of people." She sipped her coffee, eyes on the street. "I was. For a long time, not anymore. No." Her voice was quiet. "Not by choice, he waited. My father stepped down last year, health stuff. Everyone assumed I'd take over Grayson Holdings without question. I did. Until 3 weeks ago, when the board decided I wasn't the right face to lead anymore." He blinked. "That's a lot to drop before breakfast." "I figured it was time." She glanced at him. "I'm not here by accident. I'm here because I got tired of being told who I had to be. And when they pushed me out, I realized I'd forgotten who I actually was." Logan leaned back against the railing, absorbing that. "So what now? I'm not sure yet." She looked at him. "But I know I want whatever I do next to feel real, not strategic, not polished, just real." He studied her. "You know, you're allowed to want something for yourself without it being a mission." "That's the hardest part," she said. "Not turning everything into a goal." Danny shouted from across the street as his front tire hit a pothole. Logan jogged over to help and Noelle followed, grabbing the twisted handlebars. "Guess we need a new front wheel," Logan said. "I'll pay for it," Noelle said instantly. "No," she held up a hand. "Let me, it's not charity, it's a thank you. For letting me crash pancakes and backyard soccer." He hesitated, then nodded once. "All right, but only if you let me fix the brakes for free," she smiled. "Deal." Later that week, Logan came home from a drywall job to find a paper bag on his doorstep. Inside was a brand new bike wheel, a box of cookies shaped like dinosaurs, and a note in tight, elegant handwriting. Thought he could use a sidekick upgrade. Danny found the cookies and launched into a 10-minute monologue about prehistoric herbivores, but Logan's eyes stayed on the note. Noelle didn't owe them anything, and yet she kept showing up. The next evening, she knocked on his door with a stack of takeout boxes. "I heard you're a fan of Chinese," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "From who?" "Danny. He said you eat dumplings when you're stressed." "Well, now I'm concerned about how much he's telling you." They sat at the kitchen table, chopsticks in hand, Danny curled on the couch with a blanket and a stack of library books. So, Logan asked, lifting a piece of broccoli. What's the plan? Start your own company, run for office. Buy a vineyard in Italy, none of the above, Noelle said, glancing down at her food. I've been thinking about something smaller, more local. I've always wanted to open a community center. A real one, not the flashy kind. Logan looked at her for a long moment. You'd be good at that. You think so. I've seen the way you talk to people. Danny adores you. You listen. That matters. She didn't speak for a few seconds. Then softly, I don't think anyone's said that to me in a long time. You've probably been too busy proving you're strong to hear it. She met his gaze. You're not what I expected. Most people aren't. That night after Noelle left, Logan stood by the window, watching her walk up the stairs to her apartment. She paused halfway, turned back, and caught him looking. She didn't wave. She just smiled. A quiet, knowing smile that made something shift deep in his chest. And for the first time in years, the space between what he had and what he wanted didn't feel impossible. A week later, the entire courtyard smelled like fresh paint and sawdust. Logan stood on a ladder, hammer in hand, while Noelle held the wooden sign steady beneath him. The breeze tugged at the ends of her ponytail, and her cheeks were flushed from hauling sandbags earlier that morning. You're sure about the name? He asked as he adjusted the final bolt. Positive, she said. Danny came up with it, and it's perfect. He stepped down and turned to look. The carved would now read, the Dinosaur Den Community Center and Resource Hub. Noelle tilted her head, considering. Okay, maybe the dinosaur footprint in the corner is a bit much. No, Logan said. It's exactly right. She smiled, but there was something quiet in her eyes. Not sad, exactly more like reverent. As if she couldn't believe it was real. Inside, the old laundromat had been completely transformed. The machines were gone, replaced by long tables, bookshelves, and an open play area where Danny and two other neighborhood kids were busy building a cardboard volcano. Noelle had secured the lease through a quiet contact. Logan had rebuilt the interior with salvaged materials and nights of sweat. The rest had come from people who believed in it, neighbors, teachers, a retired carpenter from down the block. It wasn't flashy, but it was theirs. Logan, she said suddenly, her voice low. He turned to her. I got a call last night. He waited. The board wants me back. He blinked. What? They've seen the press from the fundraising event. They know I've been working here. Apparently that makes me authentic. She made air quotes, her jaw tightening. They're offering me full control, no strings. I could walk back into the position tomorrow. He leaned against the doorframe. And I haven't said yes. A long silence stretched between them. I'd be lying if I said part of me doesn't want it, she said finally. It's what I built my whole life toward. But it's not the only thing that matters anymore. What else matters? His voice was gentler than she expected. She met his eyes. This, Danny, you. He didn't move, but something shifted behind his expression. That's a big thing to say, I know. She stepped closer. But I've spent years chasing a kind of power that never actually filled me, and then I met you, and you didn't care who I was. I cared who you were, he said. Just not the version everyone else wanted you to be, she exhaled, a soft, relieved sound. Exactly, he hesitated. If you go back, I won't stop you, I know. But I'll miss you like hell. I'm not going anywhere. She reached for his hand, her fingers threading through his. The board isn't what I want, not anymore. He studied her face for a long moment. You're sure? I'm tired of leading things that don't matter to me. This place matters, you matter, Danny matters. He looked down at their joined hands. You're not scared, terrified, she admitted, but it's a different kind of fear, the good kind. The kind that comes when you finally know what you want. Inside, the kids screamed in delight as the cardboard volcano erupted with baking soda foam. Logan laughed under his breath. You know, he said, most people try to impress women with flowers. You built a whole community center. I like to go big. He leaned in, his voice low. Then let me try to match you, she blinked. What do you mean? He pulled something from his back pocket and opened his hand. A small velvet pouch, worn and creased. I've had this a long time, he said. It belonged to my grandfather. I never thought I'd use it. Didn't think I'd find someone who'd actually understand all of this. She opened the pouch slowly. Inside was a ring, simple, vintage, and beautiful in its understatement. I know we haven't known each other long, he said. But I know what this is, I know what you are, and I've never been more sure of anything. She looked up at him, eyes wide and shining. You're serious? I don't make promises lightly. I love you, Noelle, not the CEO, not the woman with a past she's running from, just you. She pressed a hand to her mouth, breath catching. You don't have to decide now, he added quickly. But I wanted you to know, I'm not afraid of love that happens fast. I'm only afraid of not saying it when it matters. She reached for him, pulled him close, and kissed him without hesitation. It was slow and certain, the kind of kiss that didn't need fanfare or music or moonlight, just truth. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. I love you too, she whispered. And I'm not waiting. She took the ring from the pouch and slid it onto her own finger. It fit perfectly behind them. Danny rushed out the door, covered in foam and yelling about needing more vinegar. He froze when he saw the ring. Wait, Danny said, pointing. Are you guys getting married? Noelle laughed, holding out her hand. That okay with you? Danny squinted at the ring, then grinned. Only if I get to be in charge of the cake. You've got a deal, Logan said, scooping him up. The three of them stood together under the new sign, the last light of the day settling over the street like a blessing. It wasn't the life Noelle had planned. It was better. The rooftop garden buzzed with quiet excitement, rows of string lights casting a warm glow over the gathered guests. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and fresh pastries, and soft music drifted from a live quartet tucked into the corner. It had taken weeks of preparation, a lot of paint, a few strategically borrowed chairs, and every favor Logan could call in, but the space had been transformed. Noelle stood barefoot beneath the tallest olive tree, the hem of her pale rose gown brushing the rooftop tiles. Her hair was swept back in an effortless twist, and a delicate gold chain graced her collarbone. She wasn't wearing a veil. She didn't want to hide any part of herself today. Danny tugged on the sleeve of Logan's jacket, which had been pressed 3 times by the neighbor across the hall who insisted he couldn't get married in anything wrinkled. Do I say the line now? Danny whispered, holding the small velvet box with both hands like sacred treasure. Logan crouched beside him, adjusting the boy's bow tie. Not yet, champ, when she says yes, but she's already wearing the ring. Logan gave a quiet laugh. This one's ceremonial. Just go with it. The music shifted, and the guests, mostly neighbors, friends from the community center, and a few former colleagues of Noelle's who had surprised her by showing up, turned toward the archway. She stepped forward, not escorted by anyone but her own certainty. Logan didn't move. He didn't need to. The way he looked at her said everything. When she reached him, she took his hands and the crowd faded into a soft hum. You're really sure about this? He asked under his breath, his thumb brushing her knuckles. I've never been more certain of anything, she said. I don't want a life that's built on what-ifs. I want this. You, Danny, all of it. The officiant began, but neither of them fully heard the words. They only heard the parts that mattered. When it was time, Danny stepped forward, opened the box with the seriousness of a judge, and presented the ring with both hands. Noelle slipped it onto Logan's finger, then leaned down and kissed Danny's forehead. Thanks for making sure your dad didn't mess this up. Danny beamed. You're welcome. I practiced. After the kiss, applause erupted and the music swelled. Logan wrapped his arms around Noelle's waist and lifted her off the ground, spinning her once before setting her back down. I think you just made me dizzy, she laughed. Good, he said. Maybe now we're even. They danced as the sun slipped below the skyline, the city lights flickering on like stars waking up. Logan held her close, her head resting against his chest, and he whispered quietly, I don't care if we never leave this rooftop. We'll leave it, she murmured. But we'll always come back to it. The night wore on, filled with laughter, stories, and the clinking of glasses. Danny fell asleep in a pile of throw pillows and stuffed dinosaurs, covered by someone's jacket and guarded by a particularly territorial orange cat that had wandered up from the alley. Later, when the last guests had said their goodbyes and the lights dimmed to a soft golden haze, Logan and Noelle stood at the edge of the rooftop, hand in hand, watching the quiet city. I never thought I'd be here, she said. Not just in this place, but in this. Peace. Logan didn't speak, just kissed the top of her head and let the silence hold them. The next morning, they woke to the sound of Danny thumping down the hallway in mismatched socks. yelling about cereal and needing to find the missing tail to his stegosaurus. Noelle laughed, pulling the covers up to her chin. "Is this married life?" Logan stretched beside her. "This is the dream." They spent the day at the center, where paint still clung to the corners of the walls and the bookshelf leaned slightly to the left, but it didn't matter. The space buzzed with life kids reading, teens sketching murals, a mother learning to use a computer for the first time. Noelle walked through the lobby with a clipboard, answering questions, then stopped when she saw Logan helping a boy fix the wheels on a scooter. She watched him for a long moment. Later, when he joined her outside on the bench, she turned to him with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about starting a mentorship program for women in transition, not just career stuff. Everything: housing, finance, emotional support. It's something I never had when I needed it most," he nodded. "You'd be great at that. I want to build it here, with you." "Then we'll build it," he said simply. They sat in silence for a while, the sun warm on their faces. Danny ran past, waving a stick like a sword, and disappeared into the garden with a pack of kids trailing behind him. Logan rested his arm around Noelle's shoulders. "You ever miss it, the boardroom?" He nodded. She shook her head. "Not even a little." "I'm right where I'm supposed to be." She turned to him, her eyes bright. "You know what the best part is?" "What?" "I didn't have to give anything up to get here. I just had to choose the right version of myself." He leaned in and kissed her, slow and steady. And that was the life they built, not one of luxury or titles, but of meaning, of shared purpose, of love that didn't demand perfection but grew stronger in its imperfections. A life where a rooftop could become a sanctuary, a community center could heal wounds no one talked about, and a single soccer ball could change everything. They stayed, together, always.